Hello everyone and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm a big fan of shadowing. And shadowing is when you hear and say. It's when you listen and repeat along with a native speaker. Now, many of you ask, well, what can shadowing do for me? Well, shadowing is all about reducing your accent. Children, they get their accent by copying their parents and by copying the people around them. At first, they don't understand anything, they just hear and say. And sometimes that's quite embarrassing for some people. But that's what they do. They just hear and say. I'd like to encourage you to do that today, just to listen and repeat, not trying to understand anything, but I think you'll find it really, really interesting if you're interested in speaking better. Now I'm going to read the first paragraph from our weekly lesson, and I want you to hear what I do with the spaces between the words. Okay? Now notice how the words are joined up. The Universal Access Scheme, which granted free access to all government-sponsored museums, art galleries and some places of national interest in the UK, began in December 2001. This was known as a DCMS scheme, since the government department responsible for these places is currently called the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS. Research claims that free entry to these places are key motivators for tourists visiting the UK. By removing entrance fees to these places, everyone, including tourists, has free access to a type of education which only the arts and a dialogue about living history can bring. Now you can hear there that I join these words together. If I didn't do that, it would sound like this: the Universal Access Scheme, which granted free access. It sounds a bit clinical and computerized, doesn't it? And that's what I'd like you to be focusing on today. I want you to be focusing on how you can join these words together. It's just an easier way of speaking. Now, when you practice shadowing for 20 minutes a day, you don't need to understand anything, but just begin to notice how they join the words together. And I think you'll find that when you become aware of the rhythm of speaking, you're going to be sounding much more natural. That's just a little tip for today. I'd also like you to try to work with an affirmation today. I want you to write down on a piece of paper, I am understood. And I want you to try carrying that with you. I am understood. You know, part of the problem is that here in the UK, people are very busy and they often don't listen to each other. Now, even as a native speaker, trying to get people to hear what I'm trying to say is very, very hard. Countless times I've been in shops and offices and I begin to say something like, for example, oh, it's a lovely day today with the weather, isn't it? And then I carry on with my conversation. Or, for example, if I go to buy something, I might say, excuse me, I'm looking for... And as I start my conversation, the person says, sorry, and it shows me that they haven't heard the first few sentences. So, for example, let me just give you an example. So, if I go to my boss and I say, excuse me, can you help me with this? I'm just trying to sorry, what? Now, people in UK offices and businesses, we often do that as a way to disarm you, to rob you of your confidence. Now, this has nothing to do with language learning. It's a way of controlling a conversation. It's a way of forcing you to repeat. And it's just a way of making sure that somebody is in control. When you live in a capitalist society like ours, we use all kinds of techniques and really sneaky ways to try to let people know that perhaps one person is better than the other. Now, I'm telling you all of this because when it happens to you, it mightn't be anything to do with your English. It might just be that really irritating habit that some people have. So, let's just go over this again. You can imagine you're in the office and you go to somebody and you know you have to talk to them. Let's say it's a help desk IT person. So you go to them and you say, excuse me, I need some help with my computer because I can't get it to... And then suddenly the voice says, sorry, what? And you're forced to repeat it again. Now, it's very embarrassing. It's very frustrating. And in these cases, there's nothing you can say. It might be a little bit easier if the person says, sorry, I was in the middle of something else there. How can I help? Would you mind repeating that? But there are many of us here who just very sarcastically screw their faces up a little bit and say, sorry, what? As if to say, why would I understand you? You know, and for someone who is very interested in communication, I find that really, really annoying. So I'm telling you this because if you're having a problem with your English, it might not be your English that's the problem. So it's just really important to keep that in mind when you're talking. By the way, speaking of English people upsetting people, there's a new story in the papers today all about Gordon Ramsay, who's, as you know, an English chef. And he seems to have upset people who love food because he's put baked beans on top of a pizza. And many people, including Italians, are very angry about this because, you know, the pizza is a very special dish, well, for everyone. So let's just read through this. Now, I want you to notice again how I join the words together. And if you remember anything from this podcast, I want it to be how you join the words up, because this is what differentiates you from AI. It also allows you to give messages to other people, not through words, but through your intonation, moving your voice up and down, a little bit like music. We're not going to focus on that today, though. We're just going to look at the spaces between the words. So as I'm reading this, I want you to hear. All right? So here we are. Gordon Ramsay has sparked widespread horror by creating a full English pizza with baked beans on it. The chef, 57, also placed sausage, black pudding and a fried egg on the top of the pizza. And you can imagine that many people are unhappy about that. And it says here, the sauce of the pizza included ingredients for making a cocktail, as well as some other spices. One man living in Rome accused him of being a murderer and said, "Don't come to Italy anymore. You've just murdered a pizza." Another Italian said, "No, please, respect the pizza." Meanwhile, here in Britain, British people have also been very concerned about using ingredients from the big English breakfast on top of pizza. One British man said, "You lost me when you put the beans on it, brother," while another called it an abomination. Other chefs have been commenting, saying that it's extremely upsetting. And he wasn't the only person who's managed to be upset about food this time, or just... Our Prime Minister is in trouble this time, and it says here, the English Breakfast Society is upset with Rishi Sunak after he appeared to avoid eating the English breakfast. The Prime Minister sat down for a chat with locals in one of our pubs in North Yorkshire, and while they all enjoyed the English breakfast, which was made to welcome him, he only had tea, and everyone's really upset with him because he didn't eat with them. Someone here is describing it as a national scandal. Now, when someone makes a mistake in English, especially informally, we call it a gaffe. Gaffe. G-A-F-F-E. So it says here, the Prime Minister fry-up gaffe. And a gaffe is an unintentional act or remark which causes embarrassment to the person who does it. You can also call it a blunder. So yeah, he's made a real gaffe there, is how you would use it. You can't say he gaffed because it's not a verb. He made a gaffe, okay, is what you would use. And there we are. So that's some news today, all about food from the UK. Well, food is not very exciting. And if you do go to one of our art galleries or museums, which we were talking about earlier, even though they're free to get into, they charge you an absolute fortune for a cup of coffee. So, well, I mean, everywhere charges a lot of money now for coffee and tea. But in particular, coffee shops in museums and art galleries are very, very expensive. So if you are going, be very careful. So just to recap then on today's lesson, I really want you to hear just a little bit more about how we join words together when we're talking, because ultimately that defines you. It is that which gives you your accents, and that's really, really important, especially in business situations, because people don't really understand what problems are in speaking, because we're not trained in it. You know, we don't go around saying to people, you speak very well or you don't speak very well. We just know what makes us comfortable or uncomfortable. And what I can tell you is that people who don't join up their words sound a little bit too robotic. So that's something that you really need to avoid. You don't need to, sound like a Shakespeare play, but you do want to just focus on pushing the words out on your breath. Taking a big deep breath at the beginning of a sentence would really help you with that. Okay, so very good, very good. And just before we finish, just to leave you again with today's affirmation, which is, I am understood. And if someone doesn't understand you, it might not have anything to do with the way that you're speaking. It could be something going on in their life as well, especially if they understood yesterday. So I want you just to focus on that and just tell yourself today, I am understood, Give yourself that little affirmation. That's it from me. See you. Bye.